Carlos. Good morning.
Morning, Mike. How we doing this morning?
Doing pretty good. Yourself?
Fantastic.
You ready for Christmas, personally?
I'm mostly ready for Christmas.
Everybody getting a lot of tools in your family for Christmas?
No. A couple of Yeti cups, but nobody's getting tools, actually. I'm kind of the only one that wants tools, so it doesn't really do any good for me to get other people tools.
And I imagine you're hard to shop for because you work at Builders Do It Center. You want a tool, you just get it.
Typically.
And so
it does make it a bit challenging. Takes the surprise out of it, too, you know.
Right.
What are you doing here?
I needed a car freshener there. I did something.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, gotta make something up. I'm needing one of these for somebody else.
That's right.
Yeah, not for you. That's
Exactly.
the key thing to remember now.
This power drill's not for you.
Yeah, it's just your imagination.
Exactly. So, but if you are looking for Christmas ideas for your home improvement project person on your list, we last time we talked about, I'd say go back and listen, but we had the power outage and it's gone. But we did talk about all kinds of power tools and things, if what to look for when you're doing that. So, if you have any questions about that, head on into Builders Do It Center. Talk to any of the staff. They're pretty well informed and can point you in the right direction of what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
So.
We can definitely help you find the right gift for that special someone.
Absolutely. Well, now, I would say it's not going to be cold today, but cold is here. It's been here from days time. And basically, most people are thinking, I'm not going to be doing the outdoor stuff now. Let's focus on what's going on inside the house. And usually one of the big things I think most people do when it comes to redecorating or any kind of changes to their home is painting a new color in a room or doing the accent wall or something like that. And it's one of those tasks that's not really hard to do, but it takes a little patience to do right.
It does. A interior painting project is a really good 101 do-it-yourselfer project. If somebody's wanting to start working on their own home or they're a first-time homeowner, I would definitely recommend a painting project as a place to start.
Yeah.
It's an easy way to have a quick impact on the appearance of your home for not a lot of money and not a lot of time. But you definitely have to have a level of patience to complete a good paint job.
Sure.
Or you have to have a level of skill, one or the other.
Right.
I don't particularly have the skill.
Do you have the patience?
Depends on the day. Personally, I prefer to have somebody else do painting for me, but I'm capable of doing it myself, so I end up doing some.
I understand. See, I'm one of those people. I have neither. I don't have the patience or the skill. I have patience for certain things when it comes to projects in general, whether it's putting together a grill or painting a wall. If it doesn't go exactly as planned in my head, I get mad and things get thrown.
Good news, painting generally doesn't have too many challenges in it. It's just more of the fact that you have to slow down and take the time to do it right.
Well, it's one of those things that, like, if you do kind of it by the book, like taping and everything, if you do it, it's relatively easy.
Absolutely.
Problem is, most of us looking like, I don't need to tape. I can be real neat with it, and we end up getting paint everywhere.
Very few people can cut in without having tape. It's a slim group.
And then the taping requires a little patience as well, because like if you try to slap it on quick, there's going to be bubbles and places where the paint can leak into and things
Absolutely,
like that.
Yeah. If you don't take your time and you rush, it will show in the quality of the job, because that's the thing. With painting, it's not really going to affect your ability to get the paint on the wall. That's not too complicated. Where those tips and tricks and slowing down to get it right the first time really comes into play is in the quality of the finish. Anybody can put paint on a wall.
Right.
But getting paint on a wall and making it look as good as it should and meeting your own expectations, that's what requires a little more patience and skill and time. Sure.
Let me ask you this before we get into the equipment, because obviously the right tools for the job make a big difference when it comes to painting. But as far as techniques and things now, I know there was a time where it was kind of trendy to do like painting with sponges and things to create these different effects with the paints. Is that still kind of a thing, or are people just painting walls now?
Faux painting is definitely kind of past its prime. There's still some folks that do it, and there's still lots of neat finishes you can do. But we have definitely seen the days of sponge painting being all the rage, so to speak, were in the 90s.
Gotcha.
That said, if it's a look you like, do it.
For sure.
Yeah, there's
Your
no
house.
wrong way to paint the house. Exactly. If you like it, do it.
Yeah.
I would say that as far as faux finishes, the trend has gone more to plaster looks.
Okay.
Whether that's actual Venetian plaster, which is a trowel applied product, or something that looks similar, or to metallic accents. There's definitely some looks that are popular, but a lot of what people think of as traditional faux finishing, so wood graining, sponge painting, people that wanted to stamp patterns on their walls and stuff like that, that's definitely less common than it once was.
Okay.
If you're trying to sell a home, I would highly recommend against it. I would paint an off-white color and
Sure.
go on down the road.
Yeah, if you're trying to sell a home, everything neutral tone colors.
Yeah, Swiss coffee or
Yeah.
Navajo white or Dover white,
Yeah.
you can't go wrong with those. It looks good with everything, and it allows people to imagine painting over it with the color they would prefer.
And I would think, because as a person who's in the process of buying the new home, everything, I've spent a lot of time looking at pictures, looking at houses, things like this over the last 6 months or so. And I will tell you this, the one thing I notice, if I look and I'll see a home on there and I'm like, wow, that's really nice, that's really nice. And then I get to like the kids' bedroom and it's like striped pink walls and everything, and I'm like, that's something I gotta have to do.
Yeah,
And then I
paint
kinda
over
like,
that. Do yourself a favor. I've been lucky enough. I've never bought a home with that issue, but I've seen once when I was looking at buying a home in Las Cruces in college. I walked into a house that had been wallpapered at some point during the 70s. I was unaware that one could get plaid wallpaper in the 70s. What was actually more amazing about that was not the plaid wallpaper. It was the matching plaid carpet.
wow.
That was pattern matched.
Whoa.
So basically the same pattern ran across the floor, into the corner, and up the wall.
Wow.
Which was pretty trippy, to be completely honest with you. It was disconcerting being in the room because you couldn't. I could see coming home after a night of certain college-related social activities,
Right.
and wanting to lay down and struggling because I was against a wall, not knowing whether it was a floor or a wall. That was one of those things that you want to go, somebody should have painted over this. If they'd
Yeah.
spent the time, you could have gotten away with the carpet, but either the carpet or the wall need to be dealt with.
So that's what it looks like to live inside of a Scotch tape wrapper, basically.
That's exactly what it looked like. Yeah, or the pocket of an old pair of golf pants. I mean,
wow.
It was. I have a mental image of the gentleman who had owned the home, and it was a home that had been owned by an older guy who was
Yeah.
a lifelong bachelor. At some point, he probably spent a fair amount of money to get that done and was probably really proud of himself.
Sure.
I mean, he was thinking, man, I got the pad. I'm going to draw the ladies in with this. But, just like the kids' room, it was probably really cute at some point. But the next person is not necessarily going to have the same passions or preferences as you do. So neutral is a good thing.
Sure.
Any bright color, unless it's, a neutral bright color that kind of fits into the scheme of the room, but especially kids' rooms, stuff like that, you want to think about painting over those. It's very little expense, but it definitely lowers purchasers' anxiety about moving into the home. They're
Sure.
probably overwhelmed by the whole moving process, dealing with lenders like you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
The last thing you need to think about is, great, I got to paint over this, orange room. I had a friend that purchased a home one time, and the previous owner had been a huge, apparently, Tony Stewart fan and had painted a certain room a certain shade of orange that shall go nameless, but is associated with one of our competitors.
Yes.
It was so bright that when you closed the door on the room, the orange came under the door.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it took. I had to help her repaint it. It took us like 3 coats of Kills to cover that. That was really bad. I'm amazed they bought the house in spite of it. It was that off-putting.
Wow.
Now, mind you, it was probably because it was orange, and it's personally one of my least favorite colors because it's associated with said competitor. But it was still pretty unattractive. That's a good example of something that I would have spent the money, put the couple coats of Kills on it, painted the thing white, and gone on down the road.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this, since we're talking about these bright colors, things like that. I know you see advertisements and they talk about paints that have primer already in it and all that. Are you really saving time and quality by going with one of those kind of things, or are you better off to prime it and then go with your paint colors?
So the whole paint and primer in one trend is, I wouldn't call it, it is a bit of a marketing spin. So most good quality paints especially interior paints, for years have had what have been called self-priming qualities, meaning the paint is designed to prepare the surface it's going on. If you're repainting an existing painted wall that doesn't have a bright color that you're trying to cover, or a staining issue or something like that, a paint with a self-priming capability, or a paint and primer in one, which is many good quality interior paints, including products we sell, is a good investment because it's a good quality paint.
Gotcha.
It's not a function of avoiding primer. It's just a function of getting a paint that's going to go on well and maybe avoids having to do a second coat of the same paint. But it is not a substitute for primer in a number of other applications. If you're painting drywall you've just put up, you need to seal that with a new construction primer of some sort.
Okay.
Because what that self-priming paint does not do is it doesn't seal the drywall and provide a good even surface, because drywall and masonry is very similar. Anything that's a new porous surface, even new wood, wants to suck water out of that paint. It's going to affect the way the paint cures. It's going to affect the way the paint covers and looks.
Okay.
Primers are intended to seal. They're not intended to look good. They're intended to seal and provide other characteristics that allow that second layer to look good. You also want to use a primer anytime you're covering an issue. If you're covering that bright orange and you're going to cover it with a white, I would highly recommend a stain killing or a cover primer. Kills is a brand name. Kills is a great product. There's a lot of other good products. Zinsser makes some good products. Dunn Edwards, who's our primary paint line, has their own line of stain killing primers that are good products. And anytime you have stuff like water damage or smoke damage, food stains on walls and kitchens where you have a grease issue,
okay,
those self-priming paints are not intended to deal with those conditions. You know, those are very specific and require preparation and the right primer to get the right paint job.
Okay.
But outside of those, just normal, hey, I'm going to go in and repaint my room, looking for a paint with a self-priming technology or a paint and primer in one is definitely a good investment because it's an indicator of a good quality paint.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this. Say you got white walls like we were dealing with in here, and you just want to change it to a different color, maybe go a darker color.
Yep.
Should you go ahead and prime it anyway, or can you get away with just throwing some paint on it?
If it's in good condition, I would not necessarily prime it.
Okay.
If you don't have any underlying conditions, like I said, if you're going with a darker color on a lighter color, if you're not covering any stains of any sort, and it's an existing painted surface, no, I would not prime it. There's on an interior wall, there's no good reason to. If you have any of those other conditions as far as staining or anything else, I would do it. And if you're going a lighter color over a darker color, or if you're going with a really bright color and you just want to make sure it looks great, a primer's not a bad investment.
Okay.
Because you're probably going to end up having to put 2 layers of paint on it. If you're painting bright red or a bright blue or bright green over, say, a white background, to get a good-looking paint job, it's going to take 2 coats, period. Doesn't matter whether you're using a paint and primer in one or a non-paint and primer in one product.
Right.
And the reason then I would really look at using a primer is because the primer is less expensive. So you can take that primer. If you're coming to us, ask us to tint it for you. We'll tint the primer with 50% of the formula that goes in the paint, which is great because it's going to give you a little more color in the base coat.
Okay.
And so when you paint over it, it's going to enhance the color of the top coat. And so I would personally rather buy, if I'm going to need a gallon to make 1 coat, so I'm going to have to buy 2 gallons to put 2 coats on, I'd rather buy 1 gallon of a primer that's maybe $20 a gallon and 1 gallon of my surface paint that's in the high 20s or even the 30s if I'm buying a good quality ultra premium paint, than buy 2 gallons of that $30 paint. And in all honesty, you're going to get exactly the same outcome.
Okay.
So that's the primary reason to look at using a primer on an interior job that does not have another issue.
Okay. Let me ask
to
you
enhance
this.
the quality.
Because I know there's probably people who've done this here, and it's not a good idea either way. But just to ask it to see. Obviously, when we've talked before, in the past we've talked about exterior painting and the importance of why you use exterior paint, because you're not really painting. It's a functional thing, not so much a decorative thing. I mean, it is a decorative thing, but you're really doing a functional service. A little bit different indoors. Say you got one of those guys that they've got leftover exterior paint from outside, and they's like, wow, I like that color. I want to put it in a room in a home. Is there any bad results or reasons you should not use exterior paint inside a house?
Not really.
Okay.
The only thing you might want to be aware of is if you've used a an oil-based paint or a alkyd-based paint on the exterior home, which most exterior paints are still water-based like most interior paints, and you're concerned about the odor while you're applying it, that would be the only reason. Other than that, there's actually no good reason not to use an exterior paint on the interior of a home. You can't go the other way, of course, because the product's not intended for it, but it doesn't hurt anything. We've seen it before. In fact, we carry a line of paint that's an interior-exterior and can be used either way. So, no, there's no reason you can't. I would not go out and spend the money to go to an exterior paint to paint an interior room. But, yeah, if you got leftovers and, hey, I got this blue I have left over from the exterior of the house and I really want one wall and I've got enough paint, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to make sure you weren't committing something or like, if that's going to create problems, say stuff gets on that wall, it's going to get, worse than what it would be if you had interior paint.
The only factor that may come into play is some interior paints are engineered to have a higher scrubbability factor because you don't generally wash the exterior of a home. But you may clean the walls on the interior of a home, especially if it's in a bathroom or a kitchen area. And if that's a concern for you, you want to look at the product you're using and make sure it has a high scrubbability rating, regardless of whether it's an interior or exterior paint, because not all interior paints have high scrubbability ratings.
Gotcha. So kids because kids that draw on walls and things, that all happens.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the biggest differences in the quality of interior paints is whether or not you can clean that product efficiently without affecting the surface. Less expensive paints are not intended to be clean because they're often used in applications where you paint the wall. Property maintenance is a great example. We sell a product that's primarily for folks that are painting apartments, rent homes, that sort of thing. Those don't really get maintained in between paint jobs. You paint them, somebody moves in, they're there for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. They move out, and you paint the thing again. It doesn't really matter if it gets scrubbed in between because it's not really the problem of the person painting it. And so it's cost savings that is more important than anything else. And that's really what choosing a paint product's all about is looking at what's important to you. Here's my budget. Here's my application. I care a lot about coverage. I care a lot about scrubbability. I care a lot about the ability to touch up because I put a lot of things on my wall and I want to be able to move paintings around and touch up and make sure everything looks good. Tell us what matters to you in a paint, and we can help you select the proper paint for your application. Because that's really what it is. Everything's a trade-off. You can get more of this or less of that, and or if money is no object, we've got a line called Everest that frankly is kind of like magic in a can. I'm amazed at the quality of this paint. It's a fairly new product. You can get that, but in all honesty, most folks don't need it. If you want to spend $38 a gallon on paint, we're happy to take your money, but
overkill in many cases.
In many cases, there's a perfectly good $26 a gallon paint that will do the job just fine.
Okay. Let's kind of switch over to some of the tools and things like that.
Absolutely.
Tape, obviously, when it comes to painting a room, if you've got, actually, I would, if you've got because every room's going to have your electrical sockets, things like that. I know a lot of people probably try to tape. Probably easier just to unscrew those off. Takes all of 5 seconds.
Absolutely, yeah. I would never recommend taping around things like electrical outlets, plate switches, and that sort of thing. Just take the plate off. You don't need to remove the switch in the outlet. You do need to tape the switch in the outlet so you don't get any paint on the surface of it. But no, I would highly recommend taking the plate off, putting some tape over it, and I'd just paint right over the top of the tape, and then once it's dried, peel the tape, and you're good to go. Yeah, there's no reason to attempt to do that. Plus, it just makes it more difficult to get a good paint finish on the project as opposed to putting that on. Now, one key is if you do that, make sure that paint has thoroughly dried before you put that plate back on so that the plate doesn't affect the film. If this will occasionally happen, you'll go in to go pull those plates off, and whoever put them on before, the paint wasn't thoroughly dried, and by thoroughly dried I mean more than dry to the touch, like give it an extra day. And it will kind of sink into the film, into the paint film, and make it a little tougher to get it off, and then you can see it, and it just doesn't look right to me personally.
So, but areas probably like doorknobs, things like that, if you're going to be painting doors, or the trim around the doors, if you're not painting that, or the baseboards, if it's if it's a different color than what the wall is going to be, those are areas you got to tape.
Absolutely. If you're painting doors, you really need to take the door off the hinges. Take the hardware off. Doors, the correct way to paint a door is off the hinges outside of the room you're doing it on. Because there's no other good way to get to all the surfaces and edges. trying to tape off hinges and get a good look is a little like trying to tape off an outlet plate. It just doesn't look good.
Gotcha.
And it's not that hard to take hinges off of doors. You can unhang the door, take it out into the garage, take the hinges and the hardware off, paint the door, and bring it back in fairly easily, and you're going to end up with a lot higher quality paint job.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's one of those things that look the difference between having a paint job that looks like a painter did it, and it looks like.
See, I'm one of the cut
than
corners guys that would just paint on the door and not try to take it off.
Yeah, and it doesn't really take that much time to do it because you're going to spend more time trying to cut in around that hardware, let's say,
Sure.
than just taking the hardware off and just rolling right over that door, that hole in the door, and not having to worry about it.
So let me ask you this: when it comes to tape, obviously painter's tape, the stuff you can get anywhere. You find it there, get it dime a dozen, really cheap. It's easy to do. For those that try to cut that corner and say, I got this tape at the house, it'll work just fine. Tell folks why painter's tape is for painters and masking tape's for masking and not for painting and things like that.
It depends. So,
Okay.
We carry a whole line of masking tapes, painter's grade masking tape, non-painter's grade. We highly recommend blue painter's tape, and blue tape generally indicates a high quality of painter's tape. The reason that those products are a little more expensive and we recommend them is the adhesive used in them is designed to be removed over it can sit on the wall without affecting it for a longer period of time. The white masking tape you see is designed to be on the wall about 3 hours and then be removed, and if you leave it past that, it's going to start to more permanently adhere to the underlying surface, and it's a good way to peel paint off the wall and have to go back and do more work.
Gotcha.
So if you're in a hurry and you're doing something small and budget's a factor, then there's nothing wrong with using a white general grade masking tape, but you need to keep that in mind that it's a short-term adhesive.
Gotcha.
Our pro grade painter's tape in our Do It Best private label has a 14-day rating, so you can leave that tape on for 2 weeks. So if you're working on the interior home and you're going to paint tape and prep this weekend, you're going to paint next weekend, you need to use a blue painter's tape or a higher quality painter's tape.
Okay.
The other factor is that a lot of those upper grade painter's tapes, ours includes clean line technology. So ours is called Block It, and what that is a additive they put in the adhesive that helps prevent paint for leaking underneath that. This is really important if you're using that painter's tape to create patterns on the wall. So if you're painting chevrons or lines on the wall, or you're splitting the paint color halfway up or whatever, that's really, really important to get that good, clean, crisp paint line. There's no other way to do it.
We're running out of time, but I got a question. I think I'm not the only one that's ever dealt with this issue. When it comes to painting, we talk about obviously, and I think a lot of homes have this. Like when you get to that point where the ceiling meets the wall, obviously you don't want to get the wall paint on the ceiling. Taping that off is a good idea, but a lot of times on homes, there's not like a clean line there where it's kind of bumpy and it's hard to get that straight finish. Is there any tips, tricks, or anything to kind of combat that problem?
One way around that is to use a shield rather than masking tape.
Okay.
And you can do this around doors and windows and some other applications depending on how it is. But basically, a masking shield is a piece of plastic or a piece of cardboard that you shove into that corner and you paint against it. And that creates that good, clean line. A lot of painters use that in different applications. I'm a big fan of it, especially in that particular one, because it's a way of creating the illusion of a good, clean break.
When it's not there.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
If you can't do that with tape. If you can do it with tape, if you can create the illusion of a straight line, the eye will never notice the difference. And it will look significantly better than if you try to cut that corner in freehand and you end up following some of those bumps and undulations in the drywall or the old plaster ceiling. Mm-hmm. Then you will really notice it and it looks bad.
Gotcha. It looks like you kind of got paint in places where it wasn't where it's supposed to be. Basically.
Absolutely, yeah. Even though you probably you could do a very good job of trying to follow that line, and it doesn't look good.
Sure.
The human eye is great at picking up a couple of things. We notice straight, and we notice parallel, but you don't really notice things like level. And we actually don't pick out transitions very well in certain things, but we notice the change in where two transitions are different from each other. So This is really important in making sure that things appear to be straight. A lot of folks will talk about trying to get pictures level. So going back to after you've painted the wall and you're rehanging those pictures, the human eye really can't pick out level. It can pick out parallel. So if your ceiling's out of level, most people will actually make the picture parallel to the ceiling which actually looks better than putting a level on it and saying, okay, well, technically it's level, meaning it's,
it's straight.
It's at 90 degrees perpendicular to the pull of gravity, essentially, which doesn't necessarily look flat.
Right.
So those things are important, and that's what you're really going for. You're looking for the appearance of level and straight, not necessarily actually level and straight when it comes to painting and trim carpentry and some of those things.
Gotcha. Okay. Like I said, we're short on time. Is there things, so I know we brought some stuff here, anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about we want to let folks know about?
Not really. One of the things to keep in mind is you want to use the right tools for the job and make the investment in better application tools. Spend a couple extra dollars on roller covers and brushes. You're going to be a lot happier than if you buy the cheapest brush that we have in the store. If that's going to affect the quality of the job you get. You are better off buying the best quality of brush you can afford and taking very good care of that brush and owning it for a number of years rather than buying a 99-cent throwaway brush. The paint quality is going to look better. You're going to spend less money overall, so it's definitely the way to go.
Sure. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about there. I've had like brushes that, because like you do a lot of rolling, but then you use the brush on as you get close to baseboards, things like that. A crappy brush, you almost see the lines from the brush, and you can kind of tell where you brushed the paint versus where you rolled the paint.
Absolutely. And the same thing for roller covers. You want to get the right quality of roller cover. I mean, we have roller covers that are 2 for $1 all the way up to roller covers that are $20 a piece. Now, depending on your application, you don't necessarily need to spend $20 a piece, but I would highly recommend spending more than 50 cents a piece on roller covers, because the quality of those is going to indicate, it's going to do a number of things. One, it's going to give you a better paint finish on the wall. 2, that roller is going to last longer. And one of the biggest differences is that you're not going to end up leaving a lot of lint in the finish on the wall, because those cheap roller covers, they shed like a sick dog. I mean, that's one of the big indicators of quality in a roller cover is how much lint they leave. And nobody wants to paint something and then look at it and it looks like it needs a shave.
Right.
That is not an attractive thing in a paint job.
Someone might want that look, but not most of us
if you want it on purpose, there's other ways to get it than that. Yeah.
Very good. Of course, if you have any questions about anything, don't hesitate. Visit Builders Do It Center here on South Main. Talk to any of the folks if it's painting stuff here. If you have questions on, hey, what do you recommend as far as rollers, brushes, they'll point you in the right direction.
We'll take you through the whole thing. We're going to ask you questions about the surface you're painting, what condition it's in, and we can guide you through selecting all the products you need to get that project done correctly.
Sure. Drop cloths, the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely.
Which, use them. Even if you think you're neat, get one anyway, because if you've got it's not too bad if you got like a linoleum or tile floor.
You'd be amazed. It's hard to clean paint off of anything.
Yeah.
You can spread it around, but it's tough to get it up. Drop cloths are inexpensive. If you're going to spend the money, I wouldn't recommend plastic drop cloths. Are great for covering like a piece of furniture, but I would really recommend spending the money and getting even a basic canvas drop cloth.
Okay.
They're so much better than plastic drop cloth, because the difference is if I drop paint on a plastic drop cloth, it can run, or I can step in it and it can get carried.
Sure.
A canvas drop cloth will actually absorb that paint and help keep it from spreading and being a bigger mess. So a small 9x9 or 5x9 canvas drop cloth, which is not very expensive, is a great investment, and you can move it with you as you work in the room, rather than having one big piece of sheet plastic that's a whole lot harder to work on and becomes slippery and has a lot of other issues.
What about the folks that they got the old bed sheet or whatever, and they say, I want to use that. Is that a good product or no?
The only issue with using like a bed sheet is that they are absorbent, but they're not going to hold paint from going through the backside.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Other than that, there's actually nothing wrong with that. If you had a bed sheet that had like a plastic liner on the backside for some reason, that's basically what a canvas drop cloth is.
Okay.
So
you can use it, but use it at your own risk.
Absolutely. You're not really solving the problem.
Gotcha.
You're just hiding it. You're going to think that you're okay, and then you're going to peel it up and find the paint that's come through and is on the backside.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Very good. Well, Justin, appreciate it as always. And, of course, go to the Builders Do It Center YouTube page. You can find all of our previous conversations about various projects there. And, like I said, if you have any questions about anything, don't hesitate. Come by. Ask the questions. If it's not paint stuff and it's other plumbing, other kind of things, the more information you bring, take lots of pictures, bring parts if you have to. The more information, the easier it is to get the right stuff for what you need to do. So.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, Justin, I guess I probably won't see you till next year, so have yourself a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in 2016 or 2017. I was going to say 2016. Wait, but you're in 2016.
Yeah, I was going to say, we are seeing each other in 2016.
It's hard to fathom
lots of each other, actually, yeah. So, well, Merry Christmas, Mike. Appreciate it, and have a great New Year's.
Very good. You do the same.